Good evening. This right here is the democratic voting process. Citizens go to the polls and then they vote for the people that they want to represent them within the government. It's one of the cornerstones of our constitutional republican system. In fact, from a certain perspective, you can say that this was the real contribution that America made to the entire world. However, it appears that the sanctity of this process is under a bit of an assault. That's because, according to the election watchdog group that was featured in the new film called 2000 Mules, they found that different left-wing foundations, as well as different NGOs, they made very, you can say, creative use of the ballot drop boxes that were deployed during the 2020 election. Specifically, as was shown in that film, the organization called True the Vote, which is the election watchdog group, they used cell phone tracking data, they used surveillance footage, as well as interviews with the actual ballot mules themselves in the different states in order to map out what at least appears to be an illegal ballot harvesting scheme that played itself out across multiple states. And after seeing the film, after seeing the surveillance footage, and after seeing the geolocation data on a map, well, many people across the entire country have been asking what the next steps are in order to ban this practice, as well as how to hold people accountable. And the answer is frankly rather simple. Now that all the data has been collected, True the Vote is going around and they are giving presentations to the different state legislatures in order to have them launch their own investigations. Because at the end of the day, it's the individual states that have their own police forces and their own election offices, and only they have the power to issue subpoenas as well as to launch criminal inquiries. And that appears to be exactly what is happening. To start with, on our previous episode, we already discussed how a county in Arizona has just launched a new investigation into this illegal ballot trafficking, and they have already 16 open cases. However, Arizona is not alone. That's because over in the state of Georgia, the Secretary of State's office has likewise initiated an investigation into the alleged ballot trafficking that took place during the 2020 election. And by some appearances, it looks like this investigation is beginning to advance forward. Let's in fact go through some of these Georgia developments together. To start with, according to the subpoenas that they've actually issued, it looks like the Georgia state investigators are beginning to zero in on both the sources of funding for this ballot trafficking, as well as on the eyewitness testimonies of the people who either witnessed it or took part in it. Now, these subpoenas, which you can see up on screen for yourself, were first obtained by justthenews.com through an open records request. And they show that the State Elections Board, as well as the Georgia Secretary of State, Mr. Brad Raffensperger, they are looking for the identities of any suspected participants in this ballot harvesting scheme. Here's in fact specifically what the subpoena says they're looking for. Quote, the identity of anyone who has not smashed that like button and who has not yet subscribed to the Facts Matter YouTube channel. Now, I'm of course just joking here. The state of Georgia is not looking into the like button situation, but I am. So if you don't want to be investigated, smash both that like and subscribe buttons. Now really though, this is what the subpoena says that they're really looking for. Quote, the identity and contact information of the several individuals regarding personal knowledge, methods, and organizations involved in ballot trafficking in Georgia referenced in the complaint, and any recordings, transcripts, summaries, testimony, statements, witness interviews, notes, or other documents describing what those individuals said. Furthermore, the subpoena says that they are requesting the identity of a Georgia-based whistleblower that True the Vote actually got a chance to interview and who admitted in their testimony to being paid $10 per ballot for his work. Specifically on this point, here's what the subpoena requests. Quote, all statements that John Doe made regarding his alleged participation in ballot harvesting in Georgia. Now, I do want to pause here for a quick moment and touch on this particular whistleblower, this John Doe character, because this was not something that was actually mentioned in the 2000 Mules film. You see, back in March of this year, in March of 2022, True the Vote submitted a detailed report to the Georgia State Legislature which explained their methodologies, such as the cell phone geo-tracking as well as their surveillance footage, but it also included direct testimony from an interview that they were able to get with an actual mule. Here's in fact what True the Vote wrote in their letter that was addressed to the Georgia Secretary of State. Quote, acting upon information provided to us, True the Vote's contracted team of researchers and investigators spoke with several individuals regarding personal knowledge, methods, and organizations involved in ballot trafficking in Georgia. One such individual, hereinafter referred to as John Doe, admitted to personally participating and provided specific information about the ballot trafficking process. This information was provided under agreement of anonymity. And just for your reference, there is a footnote in their letter explaining why the identity of this individual is redacted. And as you likely guessed, it's because that they want to protect the individual's individual safety, as well as to make sure that John Doe feels comfortable enough to speak openly about committing an actual crime. Regardless, let's dive into what John Doe actually said he was doing. Here's how the letter continues. Quote, John Doe described a network of non-governmental organizations, otherwise known as NGOs, that work together to facilitate a ballot trafficking scheme in Georgia. John Doe claimed to have been one of many individuals paid to collect and deliver absentee ballots during the early voting periods of the November 2020 general election and the January 2021 runoff election. While acknowledging that others might view his actions as inappropriate, John Doe did not seem to understand the unlawful nature of this conduct, nor that it might constitute organized criminal activity. John Doe's perception was that he had been hired to do a job, and it was appropriate to be paid for the services rendered. However, I do want to point out that what John Doe is describing here in this letter is in fact illegal under Georgia state law. That's because according to HB 316, within the state of Georgia, a voter can either personally mail the ballot him or herself, or it can be delivered by an immediate family member, meaning that this practice of ballot harvesting is completely illegal. But it doesn't look like that stopped these individuals from doing it anyway. Here's how the testimony continues. Quote, John Doe's assignment included collecting ballots, both from voters in targeted neighborhoods and from NGOs that had their own ballot collection processes, delivering those ballots to other NGOs, picking up designated ballot bundles from the same group of NGOs, and depositing ballots into drop boxes spanning 6 counties in the metro Atlanta area. Each drop box delivery would typically include between 5 to 20 ballots. John Doe described a payment validation process which involved taking cell phone pictures of the drop box where ballots were deposited. Participants were compensated, typically at a rate of $10 per ballot. John Doe stated he had been paid directly by one of these NGOs. Now, what he is describing there is an illegal ballot harvesting scheme, one in which it appears that these NGOs were soliciting and harvesting ballots and then paying ballot mules $10 a pop in order to get them delivered into a box. Now, Ms. Catherine Engelbrecht, the founder of True the Vote, she said that she has received the subpoenas from the Georgia Secretary of State and is consulting with her attorneys regarding the next steps. Here's specifically what she said in a statement to Just the News. Quote, I can confirm that Secretary Raffensperger is actively investigating allegations of ballot trafficking and voter abuse. The issues his team is tackling are both massive and complex, and investigations like this will take time. Now, besides the identity of John Doe, this subpoena is also requesting any information that Catherine or her researchers have about the streams of funding that went to this alleged ballot harvesting scheme. Specifically, the subpoenas ask for the identities of the, quote, network of non-governmental organizations that work together to facilitate a ballot trafficking scheme in Georgia, as well as any information about the 10 hubs that True the Vote alleged were behind the coordination of the ballot trafficking. Now, as of right now, as of this moment, the specific names of the NGOs and the different foundations have yet to be revealed. However, in a fairly revealing interview that the Georgia Secretary of State gave on a podcast over at Just the News, well, he mentioned that besides investigating the organized effort of ballot harvesting, his office was also investigating the organized effort at registering non-citizens. Specifically, the Secretary of State said that his office conducted a citizenship audit of Georgia's voter rolls, and they found more than 1,600 non-citizens who tried to register to vote, which is actually a felony within the state of Georgia. Here's specifically what he said, quote, what I found is we had 1,634 people that were never put on the voter rolls. They were in the pending status because they couldn't prove their citizenship. That's a felony in Georgia to even attempt to register if you're a non-citizen, and that's a 1 to 10-year prison term and up to a $100,000 fine. Then, the Secretary of State said that he has actually referred these cases to the different attorney generals across the state, adding that he is currently investigating whether these 1,600 people attempted to register to vote of their own volition, or if there was actually an organized effort leading them from behind the scenes. Here's specifically what he said, quote, the office sent the information they found to the state attorney general and local district attorneys who will interview those who couldn't prove their citizenship and ask them, did you do this on your own free will, or were you put up by some third-party organization? Through these investigations, they will find out if there is an organization that's been really attempting to get non-citizens on the voter rolls in Georgia. Now, the idea that there is some organized effort to get non-citizens registered to vote might sound like a conspiracy theory. However, the Secretary of State mentioned that it would actually be fairly consistent with what's been happening in the state of Georgia for the past several years now. And as an example of what he meant by that, he noted that right now there's an organization called Fair Fight Action, which is actually a group founded by Ms. Stacey Abrams, and they are currently suing the state of Georgia because they say say that the state law, which requires ID and proof of citizenship for voters, violates the U.S. Constitution. And therefore, they're arguing that it's illegal to force voters to prove their citizenship in order to vote. Here's specifically how the Secretary of State described the situation. Quote, "When Stacey Abrams ran for governor 4 years ago, she talked about the blue wave, and she said, that's the people who are documented and undocumented, i.e., that means the non-citizens. She wanted them to be able to vote in our elections, and absolutely not. I've been pushing back on that. I think that's an incredibly critical issue, not just for us here in Georgia, but for the entire country. Only American citizens should vote." And by the way, I should mention that right here in New York City, where we filmed this program, a new law now allows non-citizens to vote here in the city elections. And so his claim that this type of movement is affecting the entire country, not just Georgia, is now without merit. Regardless, Catherine from True the Vote, she commented on this line of inquiry in Georgia, saying that indeed, there appears to be a hidden hand guiding things from behind the scenes. Here's what she said in an interview, quote, "I think that Secretary Raffensperger is right when he says there's a secret hand that has its reach in all these processes. Now, there's one other thing that is worth mentioning for a bit of context here, which is that for one, this Georgia voter fraud investigation has been delayed for several months now, while there has been a change of personnel at the state's election board. And secondly, the ramp up in this investigation came just as Brad Raffensperger, who is of course the Secretary of State, is currently locked up in a fairly tight primary election against Jody Hice, who is the Trump-endorsed challenger for the seat of Secretary of State. Now, whether this timing has anything to do with this investigation suddenly making such big strides, well, you can make that determination for yourself. Regardless, though, now that the investigation is making some headway, I will continue to report to you any details as they come about. And if you'd like to read either the letter from True the Vote, which includes the testimony from John Doe, the whistleblower, or if you would like to read the subpoena for yourself from the state of Georgia, well, I'll throw all that down into the description box below this video for you to check out. And all I ask in return is that you take a super quick moment to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. And now let's, sir, what's this? It's me. Of course it's secure, because we use the Sekur app, which is the sponsor of today's episode, as well as an awesome email and message service provider that actually cares about your privacy. Now listen, it's no big secret that our data is being mined and remined all the time. In fact, there was a recent study that was published in the year 2020, which found that 155 million Americans, likely including you and me, have suffered some form of data breach. And frankly, that's only what's publicly known. However, all those past problems with privacy issues and data mining, well, that can be an issue of the past, because moving forward, you can use the Sekur app, which both your messages, your emails, and your phone calls can remain private. That's because they have their servers and their data centers located in Switzerland instead of in the US or China or Russia. And why does that matter? Because Switzerland has the strictest data privacy laws in the entire world, and they are not subject to the intrusive Cloud Act. Now, what I love the most about the Sekur app is that they don't collect my data, they don't mine my data, they don't mine the data and phone numbers of my friends and family. Everything is private. And best of all, at least in my opinion, this does not work with your big tech email provider just because it is not secure. And so check it out. You can head on over to sekur.com, and if you use promo code Roman, you can get 25% off. And frankly, their rates are not even that expensive. It only starts with $5 for the messenger and $10 for the email and messenger combo. And best of all, they offer a 7-day free trial. And now lastly, as I mentioned in one of our previous episodes, I recently got a phenomenal chance to sit down and actually speak with Catherine and Greg from True the Vote, and they told me about their investigation as well as what they found regarding all these different organizations that are funding the Mules. Now, by the way, that interview was super well received. It's one of actually my most highly viewed videos over on Epoch TV, and in fact, here's a trailer for it if you haven't seen it already.
You got dirty rolls, you got mail ballots, and then in the 11th hour, suddenly we have these privately funded drop boxes.
There was sort of a central point where those ballots were being delivered, and then someone or the Mules were taking them to the polls and putting them in these drop boxes. There are both international and sort of national type foundations that have found ways to get money in a variety of fashions into these communities, big money, like billions.
If this is true, why aren't there already investigations happening? What about just a fair process is so troubling that you go out of your way to cover this up?
I'd love to say that there's no politics at the highest levels of the FBI or some of the other agencies that are involved, but it's just not true.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Now, if you'd like to check out that interview in its glorious entirety, you can do so over on Epoch TV, which is, of course, our no censorship video platform. If you want to check it out, I'll throw the link. It'll be right there at the very top of the description box. I hope you click on it. I hope you check it out. I hope you watch the interview, and I hope that you subscribe because, frankly, all the subscribers over on Epoch TV, they make the journalism that we at the Epoch Times do possible. Again, that link will be right there at the very top of the description box. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.